What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another Fall Obsession podcast episode. I'm Sam, your show host here at Fall Obsession, and thank you guys for tuning in. This week, I am on here with a good friend of ours and now one of our Fall Obsession team members, Chad Allen Jones. Chad is local to me down here in Texas. He hunts primarily in Collin County, Texas, which, for those of you who don't know, is kind of the far north side of North Texas. But Chad is a very, very smart deer hunter. Chad has killed a lot of big bucks, and if you guys don't watch the podcast video, I encourage you to at least check it out when it releases so that you can see his trophy wall behind him on the podcast video. It definitely reflects the time and the effort that he puts into hunting whitetail deer. But we talk in this episode a lot about whitetail behavior, what it takes to kill a big buck, the mindset behind killing a big buck, what pressure can do to a big buck, how to make know that the time is right to go in there and kill a big buck. Like we really get into it in this podcast. It's a great conversation. We talk about some other stuff too, just with bow hunting. And I asked Chad also, just, man, why do you hunt? And his answer couldn't be more spot on. So hope you guys enjoy this podcast, but before we get into it, you guys know the drill. This podcast is brought to you guys by Ridge Rock Hunt Company. Derek and Lacey over there in Mississippi, they use Ridge Rock to help hunters like you and me book hunts with vetted outfitters across the country. So if you're looking for that next adventure, that once-in-a-lifetime hunt with a vetted, trusted outfitter that Derek believes in himself, he will hook you up and get you situated with all the details. Check out Ridge Rock Hunt Company and book your next hunt with them. The podcast is also brought to you guys by the Outdoor Call Radio app. Outdoors Dan from Respect the Game TV, he has created an app that you can download on whatever device you primarily use, and you can stream hunting shows and hunting podcasts on a loop every single day of the week. You'll find Fall Obsession podcast on there on Mondays, the same day as our new publications, as well as a lot of other shows that just play on a continuous loop throughout the day, new shows every single day. It's a really awesome platform that he's built. He's trying to spread the word and get good content out there to those of us that are looking for it. So if you haven't downloaded the Outdoor Call Radio app, please do it. You can also check him out on social media, on Facebook. He does a couple of live radio shows every week as well, and normally has a Facebook live stream going with those live shows, so go check that out. Last but not least, if you guys are interested in promoting your own outdoor brand or a company that you're affiliated with, you think they might be interested in advertising through this podcast during this segment, we do have opportunities available. I encourage you guys to reach out. You can go to fallobsession.com/podcast. That will put you in touch with me and our production team, and we can start talking to you guys about what that looks like logistically, what you guys can expect, what our analytics look like, and all that good stuff. So if you're interested, come on over, fallobsession.com/podcast, and check us out. You guys know the drill too. All the social medias, hit them up. We're active on there. We post daily, as well as on the Go Wild app, which is a censorship-free app for hunters and outdoorsmen. So if you're not active on Go Wild, go create a profile. It's free, and get started on there. I'm going to stop rambling. We're going to get over to the episode and my conversation with Chad. You guys are listening to another Fall Obsession podcast.
Oh, you got her, dude. She's down. Let's go.
Dude, I just shot a deer of a lifetime.
Freaking smoked him.
One with nature, and if you're a believer, one with God.
Definitely gets your heart pumping. Boy, you are in trouble.
Fall Obsession Podcast.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another Fall Obsession podcast. Thanks for tuning in. I'm on here with Chad Jones, another Texas native up here in the Lone Star State with me. What's up, Chad? How are you?
What's happening, buddy? How are you, man?
Doing good, man. You've been on the podcast before, but it's been a minute, so I'm looking forward to catching up with you before this 2023 season starts up at least. So,
yeah, likewise.
So I encourage our listeners to go back and listen to some of the previous episodes we've had with you. We've had you on a couple times. You've been following Fall Obsession for a few years now, But then this past year, you kind of joined the team, and now you're a part of that family, and we've enjoyed having you on there and working with you on the content creation side of stuff. But man, I'm gonna dive right in. Anybody taking a look at your social media pages, they're very quickly gonna start seeing big Texas whitetails. And I wanted to talk to you because, I mean, the wall behind you that folks will see in the podcast video speaks for itself. You're able to kill some big deer, and you work hard to be able to do it. Um, these bucks that you're seeing this year, man, where are they coming from?
Well, it's just good genetics. But I get asked that question a lot. People say, "Man, how do you always see these big deer, and how do you kill big deer?" You have to be where big deer are. It's got to be a place that has genetics to produce big deer, and then those deer getting to a good age structure. To meet their max potential. And so it's pretty fortunate here in Collin County, which is far North Texas for people that don't know. It's been producing some studs. There's some really good genetics here, and we still have quite a few ag fields, so it's a good food source for them, and relatively low pressure for decades, because we didn't have a hunting season until 2012, and it's also bow only, which also helps them get to an older age to meet that max potential. So so that's just kind of a benefit to having all those factors come together. Is good food, good genetics, low hunting pressure, and they've been left alone for years and years, and so now we're getting to reap the rewards of that. But yeah, it's we've got some pretty good ones. I normally don't show the really big ones, just because people get a little crazy,
Yeah.
Trying to figure out that stuff. But I'll hopefully have some still pictures of those come season, but we'll see.
Awesome. So, and on that note, and our listeners know, if they're a returning listener, I never ask anybody to give away locations or secrets or anything like that on the podcast, obviously. But are you hunting primarily public land, private land? What's the overall situation that you find yourself on?
Yeah, so I'm on all private land. I've got 4 leases in Collin County. I just got on one this year in Grayson County. I'm about a mile, just right out of a mile from Hagerman. And so I'm pretty optimistic about that lease this year.
Yeah.
And then I've been hunting Kansas for the last 3 years, but I didn't get drawn this year, so had to forfeit my lease up there. And then I've got a lease in Oklahoma, and it's I didn't even hunt it at all last year. And then I also hunt some public land up in Oklahoma when I get an opportunity as well. And so it just kind of varies. Last year I got drawn to hunt some public land at Lake Grapevine. I'm sure you're familiar with that. And so it just kind of varies. If I get the opportunity to go hunt other places while my private lands aren't, I don't see any shooters or buck activities down, then it gives me an opportunity to go into places where I don't have to be so strategic in terms of hunting pressure, because I'm just in and out. There's not really a long-term play of trying to get public bucks. You're trying to go in and kill them in the moment.
Yeah. So what are some of the things on your various different leases, when it comes to trying to pattern and then come up with a plan for actually putting a tag on a buck of the caliber that you're pursuing here? What are some of the things that are must-haves, like pre-season, as far as that you're doing out there on the property and you're preparing for? And then what's the goal? What are you looking for that deer to do to actually start hunting him?
Well, it's there's a few things, but you know, somebody was asking me this a few weeks back, just in terms of hunting preparation, and like I told them is, I haven't been to any of my leases unless it's to pick up a camera that stopped working, or batteries that went dead, or just something random that I didn't anticipate. But I try to be by August 1st, or really the end of July. I try to be completely done with everything, cutting shooting lanes, hanging tree stands, making mock scrapes. I try to be completely out by the end of July, and the reason for that is the transition period we have. September is work weekends for everybody, going to the leases and putting in food plots while all this rain's in the forecast. And so as hunters start putting a little more pressure, and you don't think about it that much, like you're like, yeah, I'm not hunting, I'm just going to the lease. It's still pressure, it's still a negative impact on the deer herd. And so, I want, when they feel that pressure, they want to go to a place that doesn't have pressure, or hasn't had pressure in 2 months, 3 months at this time. And I've been seeing that. I've been seeing some new bucks showing up, and I know the neighbors have been going in and filling their feeders and riding their four-wheelers around. And so, that's exactly what I want. I want them to find mine as the safe space. And so that's why I really push hard to not have to do anything unless pigs come in and knock over a feeder, or some weird reason that I've got to go back. I stay out. Other than that, really what I'm doing is I'm putting in mock scrapes, on trails, places that I have some history with, that I know that deer travel through, travel corridors. And I'll put out mock scrapes. I'll put cellular cameras with solar panels on them, so that I get inventory and I don't have to go back in there. Because ideally, I'm getting pictures. You've probably seen some videos of some of these bucks coming into some of my mock scrapes and things. That's just giving me inventory of the bucks that's there. And then obviously, now that they've shed velvet, they've all started splitting up out of their bachelor groups. Some will range, they'll move off a little farther. Some will stay on the properties that I have. And then it'll kind of help me navigate of, okay, is the one on the property the one I want to hunt? Or, has the one that I really am focused on moved off somewhere, and now I got to figure out a way to get him back, and a lot of those things come into, is my opportunity early season while he's patternable coming to food? Is it during the pre-rut when he's out cruising looking for does in their doe bedding areas, or is it the rut when he's just out cruising, And so, there's just a lot of different variables that play into that. And it's not just me coming up with that game plan. I also have to anticipate what neighbors are doing as well, when they're hunting, because, some of them hunt relatively close to me. And it's like, if I know they're hunting this location and the wind's bad for where I know these deer are coming from, then I won't even hunt those days, just because I know they're running it for not only themselves, but they're running it for me too. And so I just kind of let my cameras do the work for me, and then determine, where I'm going to go. That's kind of the reason I have so many leases here, is it gives me other opportunities. And plus, not all the leases produce big deer, from year to year, I might have some giants on one lease, and the next year not see any. So it at least just kind of lets me move around.
Yeah. So you're not hitting a property at all unless you're seeing what you want to see from the bucks. You're not hunting just to hunt.
Well, and not just that, but I also, I don't go hunt unless a buck that I'm wanting to shoot, or say if I got 2 or 3 hit listers, unless they're coming in daylight. I mean, I'm getting tons of nighttime pictures right now, but like I say, it's also 100 degrees, so that's expected.
Right.
But also they're getting a little more pressure. Farmers cutting ag fields, cutting hay, neighbors going in, filling their feeders, hanging their stands. So it's pushing them around to move a little more at night. right now anyways. And so, but yeah, I normally, it's probably been, I don't know, 7, 8 years since I've hunted opening weekend. Just because the bucks that I'm after they're not daylighting, and I could go sit, and think, well, maybe, today's the first day they daylight and walk through, but I don't like taking those odds, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because more than likely what happens is, even if you don't see that buck, during shooting hours, you're now slowly educating them when you get down and walk back to your truck, because if he comes in at night, like he's obviously been doing at that point, and smells your scent on the ground, you might ruin your opportunity before you ever even get it.
Yeah.
And so, unless I have bucks showing up in daylight, I don't go. Now, I will say what typically marks that kickoff for me is around like the 18th of August. 18th, 19th, the pre-rut really starts ramping up. And so from there through Halloween is when I see some of the biggest bucks I've ever seen in daylight.
Gotcha. That pre-rut's where it's at, huh?
Yeah, they're at that point they're out seeking, they're ranging out a little farther, but they're locating doe bedding areas. So that way they can scent check those doe bedding areas, and then they just monitor those until that first doe comes into heat, and then it's go time.
Yeah.
And then the does for us, like our area here in Collin County, on average, I mean, you might have some that come in to heat a little bit early, into the 1st of November, but I would say the peak of the estrus is, around the 15th.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I know that's one thing that I've been trying to be a whole lot more cognizant of this year with our property, because this is our 3rd year on our lease, and it's been an evolution, going through all this stuff, and we certainly didn't have a whole lot of setups. And the first year I definitely overhunted it in one spot, and even last year I overhunted a different spot in particular, just because I like being in a tree, and I let that get the better of me, and that was the only tree stand I had that year. And this year I'm trying to be a lot smarter about it, because we actually do have some decent bucks on camera this year. And like I told my dad the other day, I don't even, just with the temps and what my bucks are doing right now, I don't even know if I'm going to hunt opening weekend, just because I don't want to mess up what could happen opening week or the week after, based on the whitetail behavior and stuff. So there's definitely, I definitely see a lot of people just like, oh, it's opening weekend, got to get out there, and that for some folks that's not always the case. So
yeah, I mean, we've been waiting a whole year, right?
Exactly, yeah,
for this time. And so I think that's what, and you see people shoot really good deer opening weekend all the time, but that's also people that are hunting deer that are been on the pattern, that are coming in late evening, the last 30 minutes of daylight and afternoon or something that makes those bucks killable. But it's the people that are going, man, I have a giant on camera, I'm itching to get out there and hunt him, but he's only coming in at 10 o'clock at night. You're on a hope and a prayer that day. And so unless there's a cold front or some kind of crazy pressure system that comes through, I mean, there's no point to chance it. And I think most people get caught up in this because they're going, I don't want the neighbor to shoot him.
Right.
So I'm going to get out there and hunt as much as I can. And what happens is the neighbor normally ends up shooting him because you've put too much pressure on a deer that wasn't killable because he's moving at night when you're out there putting in all that time. And it, a mature buck, it does not take much scent on the ground, hearing your car door, your 4-wheeler start. I mean, it doesn't take much for them to adapt to that, and so that's just, I would say that's something that people got to be cognizant of is, those deer will smell where you've come and gone, and it starts educating them even when you're not there, so it's just something you got to be thoughtful of.
Absolutely. So let's say you on any given property, you see the activity, you see the whitetail behavior that you want, that and the weather's working, like everything's lined up. It's like, all right, it's time to hunt. Let's get out there. Are you hunting all day, nonstop?
It depends. I mean, if my cameras are telling me there's bucks, starting to show up at 11, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, then yeah, it's all day sits for me. But if they're only coming in and say they've been up cruising all, milling around all night, and I'm getting some daylight activity of them at last light, or right at dawn, or really right before they're going back into their bed, to where I could possibly slip in there and catch them on their way back to bed would be one thing. But I normally don't hunt mornings really until the pre-rut either, is because these deer are up feeding all night, and it's still hot in October for us. So a lot of these deer are up feeding all night. That's when they like getting out and wandering around and going on excursions and looking for doe bedding areas. And so you're now trying to walk through the dark to get to your stand. You don't know where the deer are at this point. And so you might get lucky and make it there and get in and then happen to catch them coming late back to bed on the way through. I mean, it happens all the time, but I don't put all my eggs in one basket on something like that. It's like, I try to wait until I've got consistent daylight pictures of them, or there's a weather pattern. Say like when I have mock scrapes out or licking branches, and right now the bucks use them and the does use them, but when they start getting frequented all the time, especially if there's a rain event, I always try to go and hunt right after that rain event, especially like if it rains at night and it keeps a lot of those deer kind of pinned down because of a bad thunderstorm. I always want to try to go in and hunt over one of those scrapes for that early next morning, because the bucks will want to go back to those and re-scent them after that rain. And plus they haven't been up feeding all night. Yeah. And so, sometimes that's just a game time decision, whether you take off work for that day or whatever. But if you can get a thunderstorm mixed with dropping temperatures, that's recipe for go time.
Yeah. So you had mentioned talking about, what would constitute an all day sit. When a deer gets up midday and moves, or you see a pattern of that, your cameras are telling you that, what do you think is causing that deer to move midday like that?
Well, it can be a lot of different things, but from what I've seen, because I was actually after one, he was probably pushing right at 190-inch typical. Man. Was going to be up there in the top 5 for sure of state record caliber typical. And so I was hunting this little property, but I had neighbors that were hunting all around me. And so I was getting daylight pictures of them coming in right around 11 o'clock, like 2-3 days in a row. And so I was like, all right, it's time. So I go in, I get there early that morning, pack all my little Debbie snacks. I'm like, I'm in it for the long haul. And anyway, so I'm sitting there, and I hear something kind of clanging around on the neighbor's property next to me. And this is at, I don't know, probably right at 9 o'clock. And so I get my binoculars and I'm looking over there, and one of the neighbors has already got out of his stand, and he goes to his feeder, takes the top off, and starts scattering corn out. And it's like clanging all around. So I'm like, well, this is over, and so, or at least that opportunity. But I kind of looked at it as a different picture of going, well, that buck is probably laying in bed somewhere, right? And he's already sensing the pressure of these neighbors hunting him. Well, they're hearing that same thing, or they see him walking back to their truck, or hear them start up their truck or 4-wheeler or whatever. And then that's what causes him to then get up of going, all right, I know that pressure is now moved out. So now I'm going to get up and travel throughout the day. So I sat there anyway. Now, the funny part is he did show up, and it was at 12. I was like 12:11, but he crossed the creek and went on the other side, and one of my other cameras was picking him up going the other way.
Man.
And so I was like, you got to be kidding me. And so I was like, well, I'll just sit there. Maybe he'll eventually loop back around, because the wind still wouldn't have been too bad for me if he would have tried to come from the backside, because I was at an extreme off wind that was actually blowing back to the neighbor. And so he never did. He went down the creek and he never did come back that way. And dude, I played cat and mouse with that stupid deer all season, and I never did catch up with him. But that's just the way it goes.
Yeah, man. Hearing you tell that story, one, it just gets me excited. Like I'm putting myself in your shoes, and I'm picturing it all in my mind, and all that stuff happening, and it made me think. It's just there's so many people that like to from outside Texas that have never hunted Texas. They haven't grown up hunting Texas. They look at it as you're waiting on deer, you're baiting deer, and especially with the conversation you and I are having right now, it really makes me appreciate just that if you really commit like you have to learning and understanding these animals and how they behave. I mean, in the moment, like sitting in a stand, are you technically waiting on a deer? Yes, you are, but there's so much more strategy and tactics leading up into that moment, that hunt, that some folks don't understand. And I love these conversations with guys that understand that and are able to articulate it in a way that puts it in perspective for all hunters. Because again, it's not just sitting over a feeder, hoping that a big buck shows up. I mean, you can do that, but if you want to kill big deer as you have, this is the mentality you have to have, and that's what gives me pumped up for deer season.
Man, I'll tell you, I've never shot a big mature deer over a feeder.
Yeah.
It's the weirdest thing. So some of the mock scrapes I have some that are just in the woods, stand alone on little funnels and trails. And then I have some that are probably 30 yards from a feeder, which is next to a stand. And I had bucks come in there, probably 12 different bucks come in there, hitting that scrape just about every single night, and never one time went to that feeder, and it was literally 30 yards from them. They would skirt right around it. Nothing. They didn't want nothing to do with it. And that's at the cover of darkness. So I knew immediately they weren't going to come out there in daylight.
Yeah.
So now I will say I've seen big bucks come around feeders during the rut. They'll a lot of times they'll skirt down the downwind side of it, or they might come up to it, not really so much to eat, but they're scent checking for does. But yeah, I've never had big bucks here come to a feeder. But you kind of touched on hunting in Texas. I mean, and you're right. A lot of people have feeders. I have feeders. Most of them are, are gravity feeders, and I've got some spin cast, but, bucks just freak out at the sound of that spin cast feeder. They just don't like it, but I'll get them to eat out of a gravity feeder quite a bit. But I noticed that, hunting in Illinois, hunting in Kansas, places that, have big ag fields, but the pockets of trees, and cover are relatively isolated. And so, that's where all the deer are. And so, if you're getting in between those and their food source, you're in the money. And, I was telling a buddy that lived in Kansas, I was like, dude, hunting in Kansas is easy. Compared to what I'm used to, just because you're getting on what looks like a beat down cattle trail, and, 50 deer, just one right after the other, are piling through this thing. And I'm just like, man, this is insane. but they just don't have, it's just like little pockets of cover that they're trying to transition in between. And, unlike here, deer could come from any direction
Yep.
for no known reason, and that's what makes them hard to pattern, where if you find a good trail, you're like, oh, I'll sit right here, I'm good. I can't tell you how many times I've sat on a beat down trail and I'll watch bucks and does come in on a not even an identifiable trail at all, just going through the brush right in behind me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, why wouldn't y'all just take the path of least resistance? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's but I don't know. It's a challenge, for sure. But the other thing is too is, having so many pigs, you got a feeder out, and that's you'll know that struggle for sure.
Yeah.
If you have a feeder and you got pigs without putting up hog panels, dude, it ruins your hunts in a hurry.
Yeah, deer hunt turns hog hunt a little too
Mm-hmm.
quick for your liking most of the time. I was talking to a guy the other day telling him how, I'll hunt pigs, but I won't hunt pigs during deer season. Now, if a pig
Right.
comes in and ruins my deer hunt, that's
Right.
yeah, I might let an arrow fly, but I'm not going out there after pigs during
I
season.
take special arrows for those occasions.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. It was interesting. I was explaining to a guy from another state here pretty recently, like the whole concept of a pig arrow. He's like, "What do you mean you have different arrows?" I was like, "No, I mean it's the same arrow. It's just an older arrow normally, and it normally has a different broadhead on it that
Yeah.
that's been used
The
or
ones
I
I
don't
don't
care.
care to lose.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the stuff I don't care about. And what's
Yeah.
so funny, and I tell people this, like I have my pig arrow in my quiver. I run Easton Axis arrows, and I've been shooting them for like 8 years now. So archery industry technology, the graphics and all that kind of stuff over an 8-year period obviously change, and they update them. So I have one arrow that's from 8 years ago that somehow has made it through eight years undamaged, and I can't get rid of that thing. Like I shot that big pig with it last year, and I was like, oh, this is gonna be it. Like after I shot him, I was like, that arrow, that's it. Finally got rid of that arrow. No, complete pass through, unscathed. I'm like, dude,
Yeah.
I can't get rid of this thing to save my life.
Funny. Yeah, I know.
I want to ask you about changing gears slightly. Kansas. How many years did you have that lease?
So I actually went and hunted with a buddy on his private property for 2 years, and then I had the lease for 1 year, and then I had the lease to get back on this year. It was just me and one other friend of mine that were on it, and then he got drawn, but I didn't, so had to forfeit my spot. And so that's the only drawback with Kansas is if you don't get drawn, then you're paying for a lease for nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, nobody wants to do that. So what, in that situation, what are the chances of being able to get back into, a property like that if you, like, say, got drawn next year?
Well, that's the thing. I got a couple friends there that are, into real estate. And so finding a property isn't that difficult
Gotcha.
for me to do there. It just depends on the price tag, because some of them are really expensive versus, we found some land that had a lot of deer, a lot of turkeys, shot a pretty nice 10-point. My buddy shot a really nice, I think his was a 13-point, and it was a whole lot cheaper than what leases are around here,
Yeah. Yeah.
The only drawback is, it's a 6-hour drive, because we were in southeast Kansas.
Yeah, that's a drawback for sure, but it's also Kansas, so.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, well, and that was the thing is, here we don't have that high of a deer population for Collin County. And so, so there'll be weekends I hunt and don't even see a deer. And dude, there would be at least 50 deer out on these fields in Kansas. And I'm like, man, this is awesome. But the drawback was if I didn't make a shot or take a shot, how am I getting down without blowing all these deer out of the field? You know what I mean? Like that's the dilemma up there is you got so many eyes on you. that your strategy just has to change a little bit. But it's definitely a game rich environment up there. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So what is there anything you're attributing not getting drawn this year opposed to previous years to?
Um, I think it's just I got drawn 3 years in a row, and it was just my time. It's the luck of the draw. It's kind of like, the odds of getting drawn there, depending on what unit you're in. The odds of getting drawn there was pretty high, but you've also had in the last few years have been record number of applicants for non-resident putting in just because of these monsters that's getting shot in Kansas. It's kind of the same thing with Grayson County and Collin County. You're getting people from out of state that are trying to find leases here now because of some of the deer that are shot. And that's natural. You know what I mean? It's just like Iowa and Illinois, where you see all these, high number of Boone and Crockett bucks making the book every year. Then people go, let's find a lease in that county, because obviously it's got great genetics and great food sources. And so, it was just the luck of the draw, literally. Yeah. I mean, it didn't work out. So, but hopefully next year it'll be good and we'll give it another swing.
Yeah. I was just curious because it really just, and I hate to bring it up or attribute it to it, but really ever since COVID, it just seemed like states all over were having an increase in applicants and numbers and everything. And like, I know that we were putting in and getting drawn, like up in Montana, for example, 2018, 2019, and then just 20, 21, 22, nothing. Didn't get drawn at all. And, what was previously for that archery tag in that particular state was a high 80%, success chance. And that changed pretty quickly, it seemed like. So I'm always curious when I hear stories like that to kind of get the inside scoop. So,
well, I think that 100% has a lot to do with it. Because it's not just the hunting numbers went up, but like, we had a fifth wheel camper and we used to go camp all the time. And then it got to where we would call a campground. They're like, oh, we're booked up for 3 months. And I'm like, what are you talking about? How are y'all completely full? And all these people that during COVID that was working remotely were just going to the campgrounds, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of that was contributed to that. And then you also, when we had the meat shortage and all these people are going, man, maybe there's something to this hunting thing where these people are, getting their own meat and not relying on the grocery store that now has none. And, so I think you just kind of had a whole lot of things come together that contributed to that. But, and then also bow hunting in general has just really taken off, even though hunters as a whole, like hunters numbers have been on the decline. Bow hunting is just archery in general has gone through the roof, and so. Yeah,
it's interesting with that just because, I remember when I got into bow hunting as a kid, it was, seeing all the old VHS tapes of the Realtree guys and all that kind of stuff, the old Monster Bucks videos. Those were the first people that, I saw bow hunting. And my dad bow hunted long time ago, but never really got big into it, and so he when I was learning to hunt, he wasn't a bow hunter. So those are the only people that I was seeing bow hunt, and it was kind of just, I don't know, I watched that. It was interesting to me, and when I finally had the opportunity to, start shooting a bow, I took advantage of it, and obviously been hooked ever since. But I feel like now in today's day and age, it's not just those big name folks that people can see bow hunting. Now you have social media, and anything that you're interested in, it's a Google search or a social media search away to start seeing a plethora of videos and stuff on it. So you just start seeing all these content creators that are bow hunting. I think the new hunters that we do have coming in, they're they're completely skipping or not even worrying about like the rifle stage. They're diving right into archery almost a lot of the times just because they're intrigued by it and they've done a lot of research and looked at a lot of content on it. So
Yeah. Well, and I mean, it's archery's almost therapeutic
yeah,
in a sense. Just there's a lot of people that like to go out and shoot a lot, whether you shoot your pistol or you like long range shooting or whatever. There's a lot of people that shoot, but if I wanted to go shoot out in my yard, I could.
Yep.
Neighbors probably wouldn't care for it much, but I can go shoot my bow as much as I want to, and it affects nobody other than me,
Right.
And so, I see a lot of people practice, in their backyards in the middle of town. And so, I think that's what the ease of use for it, I think, really helps people a lot with that. It's just, it's fun to do. Total Archery Challenge, a lot of these competitions and deer hunting competitions and things like, or shooting competitions has really skyrocketed. So it started pulling in not just guys in archery, but girls in archery too. And so it's just I think you've had platforms like professional archers, but Cam Hanes and Joe Rogan, those guys that have a very large following, has really helped bring a lot of that to light, where people that never even thought about it's like, man, that looks like a lot of fun. That looks cool,
Yeah.
and you're not breaking the bank to go buy one.
Yeah. Even if you're just doing it, recreationally, not even hunting. Normally, at least I've seen for a lot of people that are like, man, I just want to get a bow and just shoot it. And within a year or two, they're, at least when I worked at the bow shop, within a year or two, they're coming back getting broadheads and wanting to try the hunting side of it too.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool. I want to ask you a question, and it's a simple question, but could have it always has. I love hearing different answers from different people. Why do you hunt?
Well, that's not a simple answer.
It is not.
It might be a simple question, but
long answer.
Certainly not a simple answer. I mean, there's so many reasons that I do it. Partly, I guess I would say the whole reason that I even do hunt is my dad's always been a hunter. Really all the men in my family have been hunters. And so I was introduced to that at an early age, at 4. I was 4 years old. And so I've kind of just always grew up around that, in the woods, outdoors, just kind of following that lifestyle. And so, so I would say that's what introduced me to it. But once I started hunting on my own, I just fell in love with it, of just, it's hard to explain. I mean, there's so many emotions that you experience when you hunt. I did a podcast with Blood Origins a while back, and the best way I could explain it was that it's like being on a roller coaster, that you never want to get off.
Yeah.
And so it's just, because you have the highest of highs, say you shoot a buck of a lifetime, or, an animal that you've always wanted to hunt, or your kids, you take your kids and they shoot their first deer, and just that experience, that bond, the highest of highs, and then the lowest of lows. You shoot a deer you've put in years or hours on end, and you lose it. You can't find it, or, you know what I mean? Like it is a roller coaster of emotions. Trying to hunt a specific buck, all the time and energy and effort that goes into that. And then the neighbor shoots it, or, all the work that you put in, and you see a picture of it is hit by a car on the highway, and it's just like, but I think that's what keeps you going though, is the element of surprise. I mean, you don't know, it's not predictable of what's going to happen, but it's just those experiences, is what's worth it to me, and and you always want it to be a good experience for everybody, especially me getting my kids into hunting. Like my daughter, she's wanting to, she shot her first deer at 10. My oldest daughter shot her first deer at 10, obviously using a rifle, but she wants to hunt in Collin County with me. And I was like, well, you need to be a proficient with a bow.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, give me a bow. And, but I'm like, well, now it's not just having a bow. You need to be proficient with a bow, because you don't want to set them up. You don't want to set them up in a situation where they see one, they're not proficient or confident with the shot. They, because they're new to bow hunting and don't understand that adrenaline dump that's about to hit, and you're trying to hold your nerves together. So you want that experience to be a high experience for them, and not a low experience of making a bad shot and can't find it. So, so you kind of want to navigate those things for them. But, there's just so many reasons that I hunt. I mean, not just for the experiences, but I mean, it provides meat for my family, because everybody in my house eats deer meat and pig meat. And, it's just, dude, it's just in my blood. I mean, that's just what I've always known. That's what I've always loved to do.
Yeah. No, I recorded a podcast actually for another show with a guy named Johnny Mack. He has a podcast called Soul Seekers, and it's episode 232 of their show if any of our listeners want to go check it out. But he recently moved to Texas, like within the past couple of years. This is his first year hunting Texas. We had a long conversation about, hunting Texas. But he comes from Washington State, which is completely different. And he asked me, he's like, man, what is this Texas hunting thing? What gets you excited down here? Like, and it took me to my tree stand when he asked me that question. It took me to my tree stand just on a cool, crisp morning there, just calm, watching the woods wake up, just complete mental outdoor therapy at that point. In my mind, in that moment, it doesn't matter if a deer walks out. But the second that a deer does walk out, it just all your other focus in your life just turns away, and you're focused on that animal. And you never knew that animal was going to show up. You had no idea. It could be a doe, but your focus all of a sudden shifts just to that, and you're just watching that animal, and you don't know what's going to happen next, whether you're going to shoot that one that just walked out or you're hoping one comes up behind it. It just the unknown, like, you have to experience it, and you talking about that, it made me think of that again, because it's a spiritual experience is what it is. And it's who you are, to your point.
Yeah, I mean, it's I think that's the thing that's intrigues me the most is, is you could go to the same spot, you could hunt the same spot, the same stand, and something completely different could happen every time that you sit there.
Yeah.
So that's what is so intriguing to me. But I agree with you 100%. Days that I go and don't even see a deer, just to unplug from reality, just to sit there, no traffic, no phone ringing, no anything, just watching squirrels or armadillos that I think are like massive bucks coming in behind me, or whatever. It's just taking it all in, man. And people that don't experience that, like people that are more in the city life that have never experienced just going and just reflecting on that time themselves, God, they're missing out on such an amazing experience, Yeah. I mean, you don't have to kill an animal when you go hunt. I mean, you just going out there and watching everything wake up with the sunrise. I mean, it's just, dude, it's hard to beat, man.
Yeah. It's incredible. Well, man, I'm going to start heading for home, at least on our episode here, but I do appreciate you coming on, and I really hope that we're getting pictures at some point this fall of one of those one of those giants that you won't speak of being on the ground. So I'm hoping that you're successful in all your efforts. You've definitely put in the work, and it sounds like you're set up for success this year. So.
Well, I appreciate that, man. I hope you guys have a phenomenal season this year too. It's coming up quick, man.
Yeah.
So, it's go time, baby. I'm ready.
Yeah. No, I'm stoked, and like we talked about how I'm thinking I'm probably not even going to hunt opening weekend. I'll probably make it out there at some point opening week, I would imagine, but like opening weekend, if I've ever had the opportunity to hunt opening weekend, I always have, so it's like bittersweet. Like I'm bummed. Part of me is like, oh man, I'm not going to be out there when the season starts, and then I'm like, I'm playing it right. I'm playing my cards right. So it's bittersweet, but I'm looking forward to it. At this point, I'm a few days away.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I hate mosquitoes. Like they attack me like there's no tomorrow, and so that's a lot of the reason I don't hunt opening weekends, because I don't have bucks showing up that's daylighting very often, and I just get ate alive. So
yeah,
I couldn't be still if I wanted to. I'm sitting there swatting at them, and so anyway, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I want to hunt some decent hunting weather this year. Last year, I don't know what it was. I was always out there at the wrong times. I never had a cold hunt last year. It was like every time I had the opportunity to hunt, it was always warm. And my dad would always go out there with me, but my dad's self-employed. I'm not, and my dad would tell me that. Like we'd be out there for days, and we'd come back, and my dad would text me. He's like, "Well, I'm self-employed, so I'm going back." Like a day later, and he'd go back out there. The weather would turn cold, and he filled all his tags last year. So something to it.
Yeah, the weather's the ticket, man.
Yeah,
it's yeah. Well, that's good, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope you guys knock down some monsters this year. It'll be good.
Same for you, man. For our listeners, if they do want to follow along with your journey that you share on social media, where can they find you?
So Instagram is Chad Allen Jones. My Facebook is Chad Allen Jones, and TikTok. We'll just leave that one off the table. I've been banned from TikTok so many times, I don't even know where to start. So that one's Chad Allen Jones too, but I just got I was gonna say I just got a notification I'm on my last strike before I get banned again for like the 10th time. So and then on YouTube is same thing, Chad Allen Jones.
Do you film all your hunts? I didn't even ask that earlier.
I do. Just I always hunt by myself unless I go with my daughter. But yeah, I film my hunts, but I didn't really start doing it until I don't know the last couple of seasons, because that was one of the questions they asked when I shot my 2018 buck, my biggest buck, the 233. When they started paying me for publishing rights for all the pictures, they said, "Man, did you get this on film?" And I actually had a GoPro that I left in the truck. I didn't even take it, but I don't think I would even remember to turn it on.
On a deer like that,
the way it all transpired. And so I've made a more valid effort to try to capture some of them. Like I filmed my hunt up in King Ranch last year, the one before that. So I filmed some of them, but it's kind of one of those things to normally when I don't want to pack all that gear in, that's normally when I see one. So
yeah, that's normally how it works.
Mm-hmm.
Well, for our listeners, we don't have time to dive into it. You just mentioned that 233, I believe, is the number you threw out there. And while back, I think your first time on the podcast, you and Nick sat down and you told that story. I just scrolled back through real quick to make sure I got it right, but it's episode 48. If any of our listeners want to go back to that far and listen to that again, it's a pretty cool story. So, but again, man, good luck this season. Hope you get a big one, and thanks for coming on.
All right, appreciate you, buddy.
Listeners, thank you all for listening. We're back again next week as always. Be sure you like and follow on all the socials, and we post weekly podcast episodes, so subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on. back with you guys next week. Catch you then.